Pieces of the Titan submersible that imploded with 5 people on board have been retrieved from the ocean floor. It's been more than a week since the sub's ill-fated voyage to the Titanic wreck in the North Atlantic. CNN's Paula Newton is in Ottawa for us. Paula, tell us more about the pieces that were brought in today and what else officials are looking at as this investigation continues.
Yeah, so those pieces of debris you see, Biana, are from Pelagic Research, and they're the ones that operated the remote operated vehicle near the Titanic wreck. They had first mapped out the debris field. And then what's extraordinary here, Biana, is that they brought up such large pieces of Titan. You can actually see the dome and the viewport. And if you compare what they brought up today to the submersible when it was intact, certainly a lot to go by there. We had been told by the U.S. Coast Guard when they first announced this tragedy that in their term, the area was unforgiving and a very challenging and remote area in which to recover debris. But here we are. We do see quite a few pieces of it. I have to say, obviously, it's with some disquiet. This is the resting place for 5 people who tragically lost their lives. And I'm sure while the family members are glad to see that there will be these clues in the investigation, it's obviously causing so much grief again to see all of this play out. I will say, though, this investigation is very important, though, to many people and many countries. Right here in Canada, the Transportation Safety Board trying to determine exactly what went on. They've conducted many interviews. They refused to say to me today where those pieces of debris are headed, but they will be headed to labs either in the United States or in Canada to be examined further. And I will mention as well, Biana, that obviously the RCMP, the National Police Force here, is determining whether or not a criminal investigation needs to be opened. And again, the more that they can salvage from the deep sea, the more that they will have answers, because the last thing anyone wants here is for this to be a guessing game. So this recovery, an important operation. Biana?
Yeah, and I'm sure as painful as this may be for the victims' families, I'm sure they would like to see some of this evidence as well and see where this investigation leads. Paula Newton, thank you. Well, joining us now is Bart Kemper. He's an engineer and was one of the dozen experts in the submersible craft industry who actually raised concerns in 2018 about how OceanGate's Titan vessel was made. He warned back then that the company's experimental approach could result in catastrophic consequences. And of course, we did see that exact thing play out. Bart, what do you make of the size of the pieces that have been recovered thus far?
This is consistent with an implosion. Don't forget, an implosion is it collapses in on itself. It's not an explosion. So to have the living quarters, which is the only part that's supposed to be at 1 atmosphere or the normal, what we breathe atmosphere, it will collapse inwards on that. But the rest of the items are what we call implodable volumes, or volumes that are not part of the living space, which would be the batteries, lights, the gas cylinders. Those aren't part of the 1 atmosphere place where the crew would be. So that those would still be intact, as would be the framework that's holding it all together. So I'm not surprised to see large pieces come out. It's just a question of which pieces are coming up, and of course, what the investigation leads us to.
So if you were doing reverse engineering here, as we're seeing and learning more about these pieces, what are some of the questions that you'll be asking?
I would want to know the thickness and composition of the carbon fiber composite. It's not just a question of the thickness, because it's not one solid piece of carbon fiber. It's a composite or multiple layers of different materials and different orientations. That would give it its strength and compression. The reason why I say compression is because it's an external pressure, so it's pushing in on it. If it was a internal pressure, like a medical hyperbaric chamber, it'd be pulling it outwards. The other thing, I similarly would want to look at the dimensions of the window, which is made out of acrylic, as well as the dimensions and thickness of the titanium end caps. Another critical part would be how everything comes together, because where the joints come together will be a potential point of failure. So you'd want to have a good examination of that. So hopefully some of these components are still connected to where they're supposed to be, so the investigators will be able to properly assess what was the failure modes and what was the actual cause of the collapse.
I know you had warned OceanGate to comply with some of the U.S. regulations for this industry. What kind of changes or safety features need to be made so that this doesn't happen again? Or is it as simple as perhaps complying with U.S. regulation could have avoided this from happening?
Well, more to the point with this is out in international waters. So this would be IMO, or the International Marine Organization. That's where the rules would be. However, uh, you are correct that this was an experimental, not a tourist sub, not a research sub, but a very much an experimental item that has not been built to an existing codes and standards, such as pressure vessels for human occupancy, published in the United States, or any of the classification societies, such as American Bureau of Shipping or DNV. That's how these other submarines are done, and it's as it's been mentioned before. There are 9 or 10 other submarines, non-governmental ones, that can reach this depth, and they've not had a problem.
All right, Bart Kemper, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.